Hello and welcome here to a new tutorial on the exclusive release of Houdini 21. You might heard that Houdini 21 is now being released and available for download, and we will give a little view inside of the functionality of the top-notch software that was implemented into this awesome release. And when you jump over to sideeffects.com, you can see there that the amount of new releases is just breathtaking. There are releases in animation with KineFX, there are rigging with KineFX, and there is character FX with new muscle solutions that are GPU based, which means they can simulate on the power of your graphics card. We have new visual effects elements and also machine learning functionality that helps you to up-res your simulations in a very cool and efficient way. So you see here that the up-res is something that adds quite a lot of detail into the effects scene. Here, this fire example, you can see how this is enhanced with machine learning, the fire smoke, and also the zebra compression, which means that the VDB files, as you might know, which are necessary for the simulation as output files, they are now compressed in a very high manner. That means that the data sharing is quite lower than before with Zebra VDBs. That also means that the Zebra AI that is behind the Zebra compression is now also available for Unreal Engine 5 and versions above 5. And that means that you can enhance and use your VDB and explosion, whatever elements with Zebra in Unreal Engine. What's also very cool is the neural point surface that enhances your fluid simulations a lot more with the help of machine learning, which is behind the curtain of the enhancements in Houdini 21. Machine learning is one of the major topics in artificial intelligence, which means that it's not artificial intelligence itself, as most get known to AI in the way that it's this super new tool with the language models and all the libraries behind AI. Machine learning is one element of the AI revolution we face at the moment, and it is in combination to the deep learning, which is also an element of AI. So machine and deep learning means that your local machine is able to learn from attributes and from parameters that you have entered into your scene and can enhance this at a certain amount of detail with fairly a lot of time, and it's not creating an animation or image on the go, as you know this from Midjourney, from ChatGPT, like you know it from VO3 or from the Google AI models. It's more that it helps you in Houdini to enhance your flexibility of details, and so that you can make with a lower simulation added to an ML machine learning connection, that you can therefore enhance and add detail where you would take fairly more hard disk space and resources and calculation power to make that possible. there have also been a lot of new enhancements in terms of the NPM solver. The NPM, which stands for material point method. So with the NPM, you're able to simulate physically accurate models and simulation geometries that are actually also a part of nature, like from snow, mud, from the earth moving, from stuff that you can see down here, like this pumpkin here that is smashed by the hammer. So the NPM point method, material point method, allows you to simulate those natural phenomena in Houdini 21 more efficiently and with more collider specifications, and also post-fracture that helps you using, for example, debris sources to move forward in those physical accurate simulations. So this cream chocolate ice cream simulation here that you can see on the fly in the window there is one example how different NPM methods work together to create this wonderful simulation of this cream coffee chocolate animation. And what I want to give a little look inside today is, for example, the muscles, the GPU muscles. So we will have a look at this. So as you can see, the engine behind those GPU accelerated soft tissue simulations is the Otis, and the model that is now available in Houdini 21 is the Otto model. This is the guy here, and it has a lot of great implementations like soft tissue, skin deform, fascia simulation, where you can create a low-resolution theta mesh that naturally holds muscles together while preserving the soft, realistic behavior, reducing excessive jiggle and enable cohesive, stable muscle and tissue motion with minimal setup. There is the new collision detection, the muscle adjust volume, the activation, the muscle transfer setups, and all that great stuff that helps you working and doing muscle simulations at a new level. And here we are inside of Houdini 21, and you can see the Otto model and the animation on top of the skeleton and muscle model. And I changed the values quite a bit, like stiffness and the gravity value, to enhance and to expand the look of the muscle flexibility. And you can see a slight jiggle in the beginning, and also here how it's flexing and jiggling, like he's okay, that's a bit something that is more artifact-like, but you get the idea when we go inside of Houdini how this is working under the hood. So before we get started with the new Houdini release, I would like to mention that also the administrator process of activating the Houdini 21 license is quite different, as the Houdini launcher is new and the license and administration H key software is also a bit new. And I had fairly a little workaround to make this actually adjusting to my current license, which was at the beginning Houdini 20.5. And as you can see here, we have here in the licenses our licenses listed which are active. And in your case, when you download Houdini 21 for the first time, and you look inside of your license administration, you will see here Houdini 20.5 for the Indie, for the renderer, and for the Karma renderer. So to change this, what I did, I don't know if it's working at your end, but what I did was a right click and returning all those licenses so that they are on the license server of side effects. And then once you have returned them and the returning is successful, you can go here to your login name and hit entitlements. And in your entitlements, you can then install the Houdini 21 license, and it should work and makes the usage of Houdini 21 possible. So in Houdini 21 we have here the test geometry of Otto, a new model like I mentioned in the beginning that has all the GPU accelerated muscle systems under the hood. And you can see here that, for example, our bones are here in this subnetwork with muscle ID nodes, and we also can go to the bone deform and use OpenCL for the acceleration of on your graphics card, so that everything runs a bit faster and accordingly to the library of OpenCL. Most RTX cards like GeForce from low versions 20, 30, 40, 50 are supporting OpenCL. We have here also the muscle setup where you can see how the bones are constructed and how it's working together with the Otto model. So they pretty much started with half of the muscles. Then everything goes into a solidification, which means that the muscles get more shape and stiffness and stuff like that. We have here the fiber groom and the muscle properties of Otis. In that you can play around with the values of the general muscle behavior. So in my case, I changed it a bit lower to 30,000. Also the volume stiffness was being put down remarkable. The lats can be changed. The belly organs is very interesting when you want to shake the belly around. We should go with even more lower value. We have the abdominals here. We have the forearms, the scale range, the pecs, the delts, the glutes, the bicep, And we can then, here in the muscle constraint properties, you can visualize how it's glued to the skeleton, how the muscles are connected to the tissue. So as you might know, muscles are mostly components of tissue, and cells that are forming the tissue, skin cells. That's why the skin of the human body is mostly the biggest organ a human being has. There's no bigger organ. So skin is the most biggest organ you can find in and on the human body. We go here to muscle and we can here also add stiffness and muscle and values. How this is pretty much stick together to our bone model. So what's also interesting is here the tension ID, and then everything gets mirrored together with the muscle mirror node. But what's also very cool is inside of the tissue setup, as you can see here we have here the deformation representation of our skin, which is laying on top of the tissue muscles. And we have here the first, second and third input accordingly to those from the tissue subnetwork here. And we have skin, we have the muscles, and we have the bones. And everything is then put into the tissue solidi photis node, and there the actual deformation of the skin layer is being calculated and adjusted. So you can see here that it's mostly using the points and the remeshing that is happening with the iterations. So fairly some things we don't want to change actually, because the main values are fine enough. And then the tissue properties, the core layer, we changed this to 2000, the solid layer to maybe 1000. It's a bit exaggerating because to get different results with different values, as this is super complex and needs some time to dig into this. It's like you have maybe found out it's more a play around with Houdini 21 to show you what's possible. Okay, and you can then have here the Otis configure muscle and tissue, where you can add the visualization of your muscles and the glue points, the rigid points, and so on. And this is pretty much looking like this, as you can see here. And we have finally the Otis solver, which is doing the solves for us. And you can see that I entered a fairly high value in the gravity, so this should give definitely a different result when doing some simulation. And we have here the fascia and the deformed skin at the end, where we can see what's happening with our auto model once everything is coming together. So let's see here. Oh yeah, let's turn on skin sliding and also blur muscles. We have here a wrinkle deformer also, and it's working with a cloth topology. Okay, then delta mesh weak and everything else. Let's see. So here we can see how the model is reacting to our new parameters. And as you noticed, we have some movement over there. We have some jiggling in the lower area. And yeah, that's something that you definitely should try out when using the new Houdini 21. It's definitely something that will make the character effects work much more efficient, as you can now use GPU muscles for all kinds of creatures, characters, and your own creations. So let's get further to some VFX assets that has been added from side effects to the new Houdini 21. So from the reworked panel over here, we can now use some of the new assets available for our project. So let's take here the thruster and place it in the scene. So as you can see here, our thruster element is shipping right with shaders, animation, and everything you need to tweak for your own spaceship, rocket, or whatever you want to attach those thrusters to. And what's also very cool with this new additions is that it also is in addition with a Karma setup in Solaris, so that we can render it. So here we have the thruster fire and the thruster plasma, and we have also the sparks, which are here rendered in the Karma XPU. And this is actually now, as you can see, rendering almost in real time on this machine I'm using here. And you can see how the enhancement in the render speed also of Karma has been approved, not approved, but has been enhanced and is even more faster now. And you always can play with the shaders inside of the thruster material. It's the Karma XPU Pyro shader that you might know from the previous packages and tutorials, which allows you to shade and set material for explosions, like those thrusters here for smoke, plumes, whatever natural phenomena is in need of a shader in Houdini. So you can see the difference here. When I lower this to 10, it's getting quite a bit less intense. We have here, can play with the smoke value, but I think we have no smoke here. And when we look at this thruster element here, we see that we have different pyro thruster exhaust nodes where we can play and change the appearance, the turbulence. We can make it even slower for slower objects like comets, asteroids, or meteors. Whatever has this significant trail behind the main body. And we can also lower here the voxel size, those that we get a bit more of detail. It's always good to higher voxel size to shape out your effect. So you also can change the length like a meteor entering the atmosphere or something else. So you see here that with this element we can also change here the length. So maybe you know those weapon tests from the US Navy or US Army where they have those jet engines in the desert and they give full speed and full throttle to the combustion engine, and then it fires in a very horizontal or more vertically kind of direction into space, into the room, in the test area. And this is what you can more or less do when you play here with the values. Also have the sparks here. We can change the length of our sparks, and we can change this to alligator noise so that we get also here different looks. We have here the particles. We can higher this and change the seed so that we get a different result. And all together, let's have a look at our lob network. And here you can see how slight changes in the intensity of our fire can change the look of our plasma stream here. So setting this to 10, we get a bit more fire into our plasma burst. And that's a pretty cool setup you can use in Houdini 21. So when we go to our combined volumes and we do a play blast, then we can see everything in motion. So let me cook this quickly and have a look how this is combining together. So you see some comparisons between our first and second plasma burst. One here is quite long and very disturbed, and here we have our main thruster right from the shelf tool. So the aerial barrage is one of the other new assets which ship right here with the Houdini 21 release. And you can see that we have here a lot of trails firing and an explosion happening with a lot of turbulence and disturbance. And we have rising flames and smoke that's covering all this explosive combustion element. And let's see what we can do in the Karma environment with Solaris and some shader tweaking. So here's the Karma setup, and you can see immediately that we have actually everything sorted to render this explosion out. And we have here our sub import where the aerial barrage is imported. We have render geometry settings where we get our velocity blur or motion blur sorted out. And we have here the Karma physical sky where we can play with the sunlight, and we can then also enter here some angular size, the solar altitude, and maybe a bit too much. And we maybe make this a bit smaller. And you also can see that our Karma Render Engine has gotten a new icon logo. We have here this little tweaker on top of our Solaris logo, and I want to change some parameters in the explosion material now. So we have here the pyro shader. Let's make a bit more smoke so that it's even thicker and more massive. Or let us lower the intensity scale of our scatter element. Almost looks like a octopus in the sky with all the trail arms here. We make the fire available, and you can see how the fire is now contributing through the complete volume. So the firearms, and when we raise this to a bit larger value, you can see how the fire is emitted and contributed in the volume even more. Render times are now a bit higher with this kind of settings, but it's still a very great way to use and adjust elements like this, and it's a lot of fun to play around just to see what you can achieve in a even more shorter amount of time. So the cool thing, like almost everything in Houdini, is that you can break this down to even the smallest elements. And when we have our pyro burst source here, we can see how this is spreading out. And we can change the initial size here to something like 18 to make it even more bigger, and we can change the spread angle, and we can make the railings a bit lower and the thickness to something like 8.5. And when we sim this now, you can see how even the smallest changings, like in chaos theory, bring new results and new ways of visibility to your element. So here's one frame, and you see that we have a very interesting look and shape, something like a fire spaceship or some covered creature in fire and explosion element. So let's do a little simulation to see what those changes did to our previous explosion element. And you can see here how our explosion is already taking shape. I'm doing a flipbook of the cached files. The highest amount of the cache files was around 4 GB. And what from my side would be interesting, how this is compared to the zebra caching I mentioned at the beginning, as Houdini 21 has also the zebra VDB caching now implemented. So this is definitely something I would love to cover in another tutorial, as we have here reached a really cool range now of our tutorial. And what I also wanted to mention is, maybe you have recognized this yourself. In Houdini, you find a lot of scientific and research papers from real world situations, like, for example, wave patterns in the ocean spectrum of Houdini. You find the black body radiation shading, which you can find here under the color ramp in your pyro shader. The black body radiation wants to add a fairly high amount of natural realism to explosions and fire, smoke and stuff like that. And this is what makes Houdini so cool, that even real world scientific papers and research finds its way into the realm of visual effects and in Houdini. So you definitely should try out here the black body radiation, which is more or less a model how hot surfaces start to radiate light and heat from their subatomic core, and hotter surfaces appear in different colors, brighter colors than colder areas. You might know this from our sun in the sky. When you watch NASA images, you can spot those sunspots on top of the sun, those black areas. And those are pretty much areas in the sun on the surface which are more or less colder than the hotter environment. That's why they appear in this black shape and a color, actually, not shape but color. And this is what also is the black body radiation model pretty much using to texture and shade explosions and all that stuff. So the same is with the splashes from the flip solver. There are quite a few scientific papers implemented, how drops are created when they break apart, how they flow, where they flow, why they flow, and stuff like that. But this is just something around the edge for you to check out. They have also the Max Planck radiation model. As you might know, Max Planck was a very favorite and very well-known German scientist from the last century. He was a quantum scientist who also made major research and major achievements in the quantum realm of the last century, and they also used the shader inside here to make the elements more realistic, which is often a question: do you want it more artistic or more realistic? That depends on what you are interested in. Nevertheless, let's look at our large explosion here. Looks cool. And back in Karma Land, you see how everything comes together in this simulation here. And we have quite nice detail. And the rendering is, compared to the previous Karma Houdini 20.5 release, quite faster. And with those images here, I want to end the first play around with Houdini 21. I hope you enjoyed these sessions and you got inspired and fascinated like I did. I would love to hear some comments from you, and stay tuned for the second part, which will be released very soon. Thanks, bye bye.